And now, let's welcome our moderators for today's town hall, ABC7 Eyewitness News anchor Mark Brown and KPCC senior political reporter Mary Plummer.
Good morning. Fight on. All right, thought I'd try it. We are pleased to welcome you all to the first town hall of the year, featuring 6 of the major candidates who are vying to be California's next governor. With nearly 40 million residents, California is the most populous state in the nation, and with a $2.7 trillion gross domestic product, California is one of the largest economies in the world. What happens in California doesn't stay in California. The state's ability to attract tourism, draw new investment, and pursue innovation has an impact beyond its borders. And the way that California addresses challenging policy issues like poverty, public safety, and access to health care can have a ripple effect across the country. As a result, the election of our next governor will undoubtedly have national, if not international, implications. The governor enjoys significant power and influence. He or she serves as the chief executive of our state government, as well as the commander-in-chief of the California National Guard and the State Military Reserve. The governor oversees the state's budget and is responsible for setting and implementing a broad policy and legislative agenda. We are very fortunate to have 6 of the major candidates in attendance, one of whom may emerge as our next governor. This town hall is being webcast live on ABC7's website, abc7.com, and we also have listeners joining us live on 89.3 KPCC. Our partners are also streaming the town hall on Facebook Live. If you'd like to join the conversation on social media, please do so using the hashtag ECSummit26.
It is now our pleasure to introduce the candidates in alphabetical order. In the interest of time and decorum, we ask that you please hold your applause until all of the candidates have been introduced. Let's get started. Travis Allen was elected to the State Assembly in 2012 to represent the 72nd Assembly District. He holds a bachelor's degree in economics from Cal State Long Beach and has also studied at Cal State Los Angeles. John Chung is the California State Treasurer elected in 2014. He has also served on the State Board of Equalization and as State Controller. He graduated from the University of South Florida with a degree in finance and attended Georgetown Law. John Cox is a small businessman and founder of an affiliate of the nonprofit Rebuilding Together. He attended the University of Illinois at Chicago, graduating with a degree in accounting and political science, and he has a law degree from the Chicago-Kent College of Law, Illinois Institute of Technology.
Delaney Easton most recently served as California State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Prior to that, she served 8 years in the State Assembly and 6 years on the City Council in Union City. She earned her BA at UC Davis and MA at UC Santa Barbara. Gavin Newsom is the Lieutenant Governor of California, elected in 2010. He previously served as mayor of San Francisco. He is a graduate of Santa Clara University, where he received an undergraduate degree in political science. Antonio Villaraigosa was mayor of Los Angeles, first elected in 2005. Previously, he served as Speaker of the California State Assembly. He earned his BA from UCLA and law degree from the People's College of Law. Ladies and gentlemen, the candidates. Thank you. We'd like our audience to note that candidates who have formally declared have been invited to participate in today's town hall based on the following criteria: $100,000 worth of fundraising threshold as of June 30th, 2017 filing deadline, and or having previously held elective office. Now, before we dive into the questions, permit me to briefly describe the format we'll be employing today. Mary and I will ask the candidates a range of questions which have been selected after reviewing more than 1,000 questions submitted by the public and members of the Empowerment Congress. Each candidate will have the opportunity to respond to each question and will be given 1 minute. Follow-up questions will be posed at the discretion of the moderators. The candidates are appearing on stage left to right in alphabetical order. We'll begin our responses in reverse alphabetical order. Each candidate will have the opportunity to respond first to a question. Each candidate will be invited to make a 1-minute closing statement. The order was determined in a drawing prior to the start of today's town hall. And finally, the audience is asked to hold its applause and refrain from interrupting or verbally reacting to comments. We want to get as much content in as possible today. We want to hear from these candidates. We are ready to begin with our first topic. And you are all aware, of course, of President Trump's comments about immigrants from African nations, Haiti, and El Salvador. Following these comments, he became the first sitting president to be labeled racist by the editorial board of the New York Times and the former head of the Republican Party. First, we want to give us your reaction to the president's comments, and if you are elected governor of California, how can you work with the president of the United States and his administration for the benefit of our state? Let's begin with Mr. Villaraigosa.
Well, I'm surprised it took the New York Times so long to call him a racist. He was calling Mexicans rapists. He was calling Mexicans rapists and criminals. He was going after Muslims. He was comparing white supremacists with people protesting racism in our country. How can I work with him? With great difficulty, obviously. I think, like so many people in this room, I'm hoping he won't be president by the time I'm elected. But if he is,
please, quiet in this.
But if he is, I intend to make it absolutely clear that California is going to mark a different path. We're going to embrace the diversity of this state. We're going to welcome our newcomers. We're going to say that our health care is a right, not a privilege, that our environmental laws ought to lead the nation and the world.
All right, it's been a minute. Thank you. Each candidate will get a minute. Let's, Mr. Newsom.
Yeah, no, look, it's pretty self-evident that Donald Trump is a racist by his own admission in terms of his words and his actions and his deeds. And I agree with Antonio. I don't know what took folks so long to come to that conclusion. Now, the question for all of us is, are we going to be the center of the resistance, or are we going to be a positive alternative to the agenda being pushed by the Trump administration? In so many areas, clearly, we need to resist on issues of low-carbon green growth and climate change, on issues of immigration policy, on health care, on education. We need to push back and assert ourselves. But we also need a positive alternative agenda where we can enliven people's senses and get other parts of this country moving by looking at California. It's the power of emulation. Look, California is a movement. California, I believe, are a cause. And the world is looking to us not only to live together and advance together and prosper together across every conceivable difference, but also looking to California to lead, not just nationally, but internationally. And that's what I intend to do as your next governor.
Okay, please. Ms. Easton.
My dad always said if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck and it flies like a duck, it's a duck. Clearly, he's a racist. And I just say to all of you, as a political science professor for a number of years, I watched with interest as a young adult, as the present Republican Party used to wave the 10th Amendment at the country and say, those powers not expressly given to the federal government nor denied to the states shall be the power of the states and the people. California has to stand up for our rights, for our honestly beautiful environment, for our amazing diversity, and if we have to, we'll build a wall between California and the rest of the country to protect the people that live here. The truth is that we are California. So sing, my friends, be blithe, be gay, or weep, my friends, with sorrow. What California is today, the rest will be tomorrow. We will stand together on behalf of all of our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. I caution our audience once again, please don't react to the comments. We're trying to get as much in as possible. Mr. Cox.
I grew up on the south side of Chicago. My mom was a single mom raising 4 kids, was a school teacher in an all-black school on the south side, and I went there and helped her on many occasions. I don't have a racist bone in my body. But I tell you what we got to do. We got to start solving problems in this state. I'm a businessman. I'm not a politician. We can certainly demonize other people, but what we've got to do is we've got to sit down and we've got to focus on solving problems. That's what a businessman does. That's what I've done for 40 years. I don't have the luxury of calling somebody a name and then deflecting the issue. I have to solve problems, I have to address them, or else I don't have a business. And I've got to tell you, California is unaffordable for most people. Our business climate is the worst in the nation. Our roads and our education are lousy. We've got to focus on the things that are going to make life quality for the people of California, not demonize the president. We've got to answer the question of whether we're going to have a state that's sustainable in the future.
Quiet, please. Mr. Chung.
Good morning. Like John Coxey, I grew up on the south suburbs of Chicago, and if you can't tell, I'm Southside Irish. My family we were the first Asian Pacific American family in our community in suburban Chicago. The insurance commissioner, Dave Jones, and I went to high school. He witnessed the extraordinary discrimination that my family faced, but more importantly, overcame. Here in California, we celebrate our diversity. We're going to challenge President Trump on the issues that are absolutely critical to all Californians: climate change, inclusion, accessible housing, opportunity and education for all. We have always been that beacon, that city on the hill that people have looked to. And so we will work with President Trump where we can, but we're going to challenge President Trump on things that are absolutely essential about what is best about our great state and, more importantly, our people. We're going to make sure that we understand that there's a future and President Trump can join us. We'll inspire the rest of the people all across this globe that California is taking a different pathway. Choose our pathway to a better future for all.
Mr. The clock starts when I say your name. That's why I'm waiting. Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much. I was born and raised right here in California, and I will tell you that all of the Democrats, thank you very much, all the Democrats on the stage want to deflect from the true issue, which is illegal immigration. The bottom line is that the president is trying to work with everyone in Congress to actually get immigration solved, as opposed to the Democrats that want to make this a perennial campaign issue and never solve the problem. The bottom line is that in California, we must reverse the illegal sanctuary state of Jerry Brown. Californians do not want to shelter people who are in our state illegally that are committing crimes while they're here, including the terrible crime of the beautiful girl Kate Steinle, who was shot down in San Francisco when she was walking down the pier with her father by someone who had been deported 5 times and was a 7-time felon. We must secure our borders. We must ensure that we are never a sanctuary state, and we got to make sure that California enforces federal immigration law.
All right, hold. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. We've gotten off to quite a start, haven't we? I do want to caution everybody to please limit your responses in the audience, because if we want to get to as many questions and responses from these candidates as possible. We move on now to the issue of transportation. Last year, the state legislature passed a law increasing the tax on gasoline by 12 cents a gallon to pay for road repairs and improvements. Do you support that law? And if not, where would you find the money to fix our roads? First, Mr. Newsom, 1 minute.
I think I appreciate the second part of your question. Where are you going to find the money if you're opposed? I strongly supported that. I thought it was a profile in courage for the Democrats that stood tall and did the right thing and supported that gas tax. I am vehemently opposed to the 2 Republicans on this stage that are working overtime to repeal that gas tax and, with respect, provide no positive alternative in finding the $50+ billion that repeal would entail. This is a crisis in this state. As everybody knows, we have 6 of the worst top 10 pavement conditions in the nation. We have 14 of the 20 top most congested corridors in the nation. Someone told me the other day, I love this, said we have 564 bridges that are old enough to qualify for Medicare. So we got to step up our game. The governor and the legislature did that. We have to have their back. We have to have Josh Newman's back, who's being recalled because of his courage on this. And we've got to be clear with the voters. It was the right thing to do and make the case and work aggressively against this repeal effort.
Ms. Easton.
Thank you. I'm a 5th-generation Californian, born in San Diego, California, or otherwise I would have been a 5th-generation San Franciscan. But the fact is, I grew up in a state when the people coming out of a depression and a war invested in transportation. My dad's family was from back east, and they came here and raved about the amazing California freeway system. What a lot of people don't realize is the poor quality of our roads is costing people time. They're sitting in traffic for long, long hours. And it's also costing people a lot of money. The most expensive city in the state for car repairs because of road conditions is the city of Los Angeles, where we are this morning. The fact is, even it's $2,800 a year in LA, it's $1,000 in San Francisco. The fact is we have a lot of the worst roads in the country. So, of course, I have to say we should support the gas tax. They should have indexed it years ago. When I was a kid, gas was cheap, but the people living in California were spending like a quarter of the cost of a tank on fixing our roads. It's time to step up and do this.
Mr. Cox.
I'm the chairman of the constitutional amendment to repeal the gas tax. And I'll tell you why. Because we are grinding Californians into poverty. I'm not surprised that the politicians up here want to spend more of your money because they're wasting it right now. California spends 4 times what Texas does to build a mile of road. That's waste. That's corruption, and the politicians up here are happy with it. And why? Because they get benefited by the funding of the special interests who are grinding the people of this state into poverty and destroying small business and the ability of people to live their lives. I am certainly interested in building new roads. I am certainly interested in building capacity. You should know that this gas tax that they so champion specifically forbids new capacity. Anybody who lives in Los Angeles knows we've got to do something about the traffic jams that are killing the productivity of all Californians. I will solve the problem. Thank you.
Mr. Chung.
If you have a leaky roof, you fix it. If you have broken roads, you fix them. We're long overdue to make sure that we maintain and repair California's roads. Here in USC, you get a phenomenal education. In your basic economics class, it teaches you that you need to have great infrastructure. You have to have access to capital. You have to have the best talent to grow an economy. We have to fix our roads and bridges and highways to make sure that we can continue to grow California's economy. We're at number 6. We want to get to number 5. We have to serve 39.5 million Californians going forward. We can't stand still. In fact, we've been going backwards if we want California to progress. Now, one of the things we have to do on top of this is we know that we don't have a central inventory of the state's assets. As state treasurer, I've pushed for making sure that we have a central inventory for all the state's assets, figure out how do we repair them, who uses them, so that we can figure out a financing plan. We don't want more Orvilles, and we don't want people to lose their lives like they did decades ago in Minnesota because of broken bridges. I support the tax.
Mr. Allen.
Look, there's a false narrative of Jerry Brown and all the Democrats on the stage, which is California needs to tax its citizens more money to fix our second worst in the nation roads and our worst in the nation traffic. The bottom line is the Republicans came up with a plan 2 years ago. $7 billion we would cut from the budget from excessive waste that's already there, not raise one dime of new taxes, and put all of that money into fixing our roads and actually expanding our freeways. Because of SB 1, Jerry Brown's gas tax, not $1 is going to go to expanding general-purpose freeway lanes anywhere in the state of California, which means if you don't like the worst in the nation traffic, it gets a lot worse as your gas tax just got raised and your car registration fee went up. By the way, Jerry Brown lied with this from the very beginning. You'll remember in 2010, he said no new taxes without voter approval. That's exactly what he did. He bribed 4 legislators $1 billion to pass it. I was the original person to write the repeal of the gas tax. I have now joined the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Go to nocagastax.com, sign the petition. Let's put this before the people of California and tell Sacramento and all of these guys up here that if you want to raise our taxes, you got to come to the people of California
your
first.
time has expired.
Welcome to the fight,
Mr. Villaraigosa.
Yeah, I have a track record. My mother rode a bus most of her life. I worked at the MTA, the Southern California Rapid Transit District. While I was mayor, I put a half-penny sales tax generating $40 billion to invest in transportation. We built 3 light rail lines, 1 busway. Yes, we do have to support the gas tax because we have a $12 billion backlog. But we never should have waited that long. It took us 20 years to raise this tax. We should have been doing it incrementally over time. And I think you're right, John. We've got to look at the fact that it costs a lot more to build here than it does in Texas. We can't be afraid as progressives to say, hey, hold it. How do we drive down the cost? How do we find value engineering? What do we do for innovative financing the way we did here so that we could expedite Measure R?
Moving on now, when we asked members of our community to suggest questions to ask all of you, over 1,000 people responded. Among the issues that drew the most submissions was homelessness. This next question gets to the heart of their concerns. With about 118,000 people counted as homeless across California, how do you plan on addressing homelessness, both immediate and long-term? And we ask that you please be specific. We start with Ms. Easton.
The homeless crisis is a great tragedy in California. Never in my life have I seen so many women and children on the streets of California. We have homeless people not only in our big cities, but we have them in our suburbs and even in small cities. So it is a statewide crisis. We need a full court press, first to look at what some other solutions in other countries and on the East Coast are. Things like emergency housing that allows people to get a voucher to go into a motel and that builds small, tiny house units. But then we've also got to invest a lot more in building affordable housing across this state. I'm pleased that the legislature stepped up to build something like 14,000 units a year, but we need a lot more than that. And that means we have to have a nimble governor that's going to fight to, in fact, incentivize various parts of our state to build a lot more housing. But we have to do it with a sense of urgency because people are sick. People are dying because they're living on the streets. And many of these people have mental health problems that we should be addressing instead of forcing them out on the street.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. The question on homelessness moves to you.
Travis, welcome to the fight on getting rid of the gas tax. Glad to have you on board finally. The homeless problem is homeless.
Please.
Can I get extra time? The cost of the problem with homelessness is fostered by the special interest and the cronies in Sacramento who fund these politicians. First of all, the cost of housing. People are living in their cars because they can't afford the cost of rent or the cost of housing, which is driven up by CEQA, the trial lawyers, and all the cronies who fund these politicians. Secondly, it's also drug and alcohol abuse, and we're filling up our prisons with people who do that. We need to get people cured. We need to have the resources to get people cured of drug and alcohol addiction. And the third thing is released criminals. The politicians have made the prisons so expensive with the cost of prison guards, prison dentists who make $800,000 a year. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, that's a true number. And we can't afford to keep people in jail, and so we're releasing them to the streets, and of course, they live on the streets. We've got to address the problems, and we've got to solve it without the
Thank you, Mr. Cox. The question moves to Mr. Chung.
We know that California has the highest homelessness in the United States of America. That's simply unacceptable. On this stage, I am the only one today who's working on building more affordable housing. Since I took office as the state treasurer, I've increased financing and building of new and rehabilitated housing by 83%. As governor, I'll push aggressively to make sure that we invest in building more housing so that we can get rapid interventions, early detection, so that we can immediately treat the homeless. We need to make sure that we have the appropriate services, the rapid response actions that are needed to make sure that we can intervene for those who have mental health issues, which are 1/3 of the homeless population. And then we need to make sure that we provide the greater economic assistance. We know during that last recession, so many single moms that were trying to take care of their children lost the wherewithal, lost the support that they needed. They're going through great traumatic incidents. We need to make sure that we provide the economic and human service programs so that all the individuals get access to the housing that they need so that they have a pathway to a better future.
Thank you. Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much. First, I'd like to say thank you very much to John Cox for writing a $250,000 check to buy his way into the repeal of the gas tax. Thanks, John. We will get that on the ballot.
Please stay on topic.
Yeah, that's funny. So in any event, what I want to say about homelessness is very, very simple, very straightforward. Nationwide, homelessness is flat or even going down. Everybody might actually realize that the economy in the United States has been pretty darn good over the last year. Unemployment lowest since 2000. Jobless claims the lowest since I was born in 1973. $6 trillion of new money into our economy in the last year alone. Yet California's homelessness is on the rise, up 13.7% last year alone, with the highest unsheltered homeless population in the entire United States. San Diego, people are dying of hepatitis. Los Angeles, San Francisco, we have two former mayors right here in their cities. Human waste on the street, hypodermic needles. There are people that are on the streets that have mental health issues. California must get serious about helping them. But for all of these people that are petty criminals that are choosing to litter, loiter, camp in our public places, we must get tough on them. We must clean up our communities we are safe walking down our streets. And California will be safe and our communities will be made safe.
Thank you. We ask that the audience please hold their reactions. The question moves to Mr. Villaraigosa.
What I know what we don't need. We don't need to demonize the homeless in the way that some people are doing. I think we got to remember that they're human beings.
Please hold their reactions.
I think we got to remember that they're human beings. I want to acknowledge the fact that here in LA County, yes, it is. It's the epicenter of the homeless in the United States. California has 25% of all the homeless, but they've stepped up. The county has stepped up with the city of Los Angeles has stepped up. The people of Los Angeles has stepped up. And what the state has to do is say, we're going to partner with you. If you're putting money up to address permanent supportive housing, services for the homeless, housing for the homeless, then we've got to match that money. We've got to address the fact that it's too difficult to build permanent supportive housing in communities across this state.
Thank you. Mr. Newsom, you'll close out this round.
In a minute.
Mayor, you asked a specific question about what our specific proposals are.
Thank you.
California has been the only state in the nation that has not had an interagency council to end chronic homelessness. California and its leadership has not been intentional in addressing this issue for decades. That needs to change. We need more and aggressive SSI advocacy. We need to utilize the Medi-Cal system differently through our whole person care programs. We need to recognize this fundamental fact: shelters solve sleep, housing solves homelessness. Housing with supportive services to deal with the underlying reasons people are out in the streets and the sidewalks in the first place. People that are suffering from bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, paranoia, people that are self-medicating with drug or alcohol addictions. This is a point of passion for me as a former mayor that was aggressive in my efforts to address this issue. I will be aggressive as your next governor. This is a point of pride as well because we put out the most comprehensive plan to end the issue of chronic homelessness in this state of any person up on this stage.
Thank you.
Next, immigration. The Trump administration has removed temporary protected status for immigrants from Haiti, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Sudan, as well as protections for DACA recipients. He has also ordered ICE to intensify its enforcement efforts. As governor, would you support or oppose such policies? Explain how your administration would respond. We begin with Mr. Cox.
First of all, I want to say as well that we don't need demonization or rhetoric to solve problems. We also don't need more government agencies. What we need is good solutions that are forged from intelligence and common sense. That's what we need. And that's the issue with immigration as well. We need a growing economy here, and we've benefited tremendously from the immigrants who have come to this country legally. But I got to tell you, we've got an immigration problem. And we've got a border security issue that we've got to solve as well. I live in San Diego. We have a border wall. We need to build that wall. And I tell you what, it shouldn't even be controversial. It shouldn't be.
Quiet,
we need
please.
to have security.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please.
A country that doesn't have security is not doing the best for its citizens. But we also need to welcome people who can contribute to the American dream, who can pick the fruits and vegetables that have made California #1 in agriculture, and who will start wait a minute, but they also start the businesses of the future that employ all of our people.
Quiet, please.
You gotta let me finish, people.
I'll give you 5 more seconds.
We need to have people who come to this country who contribute, and that's what we'll do when we solve the problem. Thank you.
Mr. Chung.
If you're not Native American, your ancestors or you are an immigrant to the United States of America.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please.
We're all in the same boat, right? We had generations who came from Great Britain, Ireland, Germany, Italy, all the globes, right? My parents were immigrants to this country. They are just really decent, good folks who sacrificed it because they wanted to make sure that their kids got the best opportunities. They struggled. My dad, when he came to America, had 3 shirts, 2 pairs of pants. He just wanted to make it, and education was that magnet. Immigration has made America great. If we're going to be strong in the 21st century, we have to understand California, the world's 6th largest economy, needs more immigrants. We are not reproducing at sufficient rates to grow our economy, to take our obligations, and to be the leading voice and image and hope for the world all across. So I support it. As to a specific matter, I think it's really important we protect students on DACA, right? They're making extraordinary contributions. We can't leave them behind.
Your time has expired. Mr. Allen.
Look, very simply, California must enforce federal immigration law. We must secure our borders. And we have to understand that it doesn't matter where you came from. If you came in the front door and you are now an American citizen, a California citizen, welcome. For these people, though, that are being sheltered by Jerry Brown and the California Democrats with this illegal sanctuary state, that a majority of Californians are opposed to, these are people who came in the country illegally and are in our communities committing crimes. They are now going to be sheltered.
Quiet, please.
No.
Quiet, please.
We're talking about the people that are here illegally, that are committing crimes while they're here, will now be sheltered by Jerry Brown's sanctuary state law. This must be reversed. No one agrees with this policy. The bottom line is that it doesn't matter what your community in, you do not want someone who is in the state illegally committing crimes while they're here. And as a side note, and it's not a side note to Jerry Brown, $50 million of California budget is now going to the legal defense for people that are not here in the state legally. California citizens' money should be used for the benefit of California's citizens.
Your time has expired. Your time has expired. Quiet, please. Mr. Villaraigosa.
First of all, let me set the record straight. The National Academy of Sciences did a study, the most comprehensive study on immigrants and crime, and they found that immigrants, including Mexican immigrants, commit less crimes than the native-born. So what you say is absolutely wrong. Number one. Number two, we don't need a wall. We need to fix a broken immigration system. This is the epicenter of the foreign-born. 44% of the foreign-born live in the city of Los Angeles. 67% of Los Angeles comes from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. We come here with the same dreams that people come from all over the earth. And so what we have to do is we have to fix this broken immigration system. We have to stand up for the DACA students. We got to say no to a ban, no to a wall.
Yeah. Mr. Newsom.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the spirit of Antonio's remarks, and I agree with him. Look, what makes California great is that at our best, we don't tolerate that diversity. We don't scapegoat that diversity. We celebrate that diversity. California is a remarkable state. 27% of this state is foreign-born. The most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. You know, and it wasn't long ago we heard the same kind of rhetoric up on this stage. 1994, the xenophobia, the nativism coming from Pete Wilson and others, the profiting of Prop 187. But look where we are today, the resiliency of this state to stand tall and to step up and step in the immigration debate. Now, with that in mind, the next governor needs to lead the national conversation on immigration reform and not cede it to the Jan Brewers of the world and the Rick Perrys of the world and others. California has more to lose and more to gain on comprehensive immigration reform than any other state in this nation. And I intend to be that governor, as I've been as a mayor. And I will say this with respect to those that say there's no one that supports sanctuary policy. I will go on record proudly saying I supported and support sanctuary state status in California.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Ms. Easton.
My father was born in Kentucky, but nobody loved California more than him. He used to say Californians are people born somewhere else who came to their senses. The fact is that this great state has a wonderful group of people who have come from all over the globe, because the most entrepreneurial, the most ambitious, creative people on earth are the immigrants. They're willing to pull up their roots and go to some place that they've never been before to create beautiful futures. Think of how we are as a state. Look at this platform. We are a diverse group of people, but that state out there is even more diverse than this platform. And we need to make sure that the people that have moved to California, whether they came as DACA people or whether they're here legally or illegally because they got brought when they were 3 years old, they still should be allowed to be in California. We should be a sanctuary state. I support it completely.
Before we move to our next question, I'd just like to remind the audience to please hold your reactions. Our goal here is to help all voters make their decisions, so please be respectful of that. Another important topic to the community members we've heard from is the environment and the recent wildfires that flared throughout our state. If you are elected, how would your administration differ from Governor Brown's, if at all, in addressing environmental and climate change issues that fuel natural disasters such as wildfires and mudslides? First, let's start with Mr. Chung.
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to the families and the friends of those who lost their lives in the Montecito fires. I went up to Santa Rosa multiple times, Santa Rosa and Napa, to try to engage with the people who were suffering. I worked aggressively in the Treasurer's office to make sure that we extended a hand out and brought new programs to bear. We have people who lost their house. They have to reconstruct their life. They're trying to resettle. They're trying to find a home. So I brought programs and brought money from the Treasurer's office so that we can try to assist families to rebuild their businesses, to help businesses that are engaged in debris cleanup. Santa Rosa, the regional health clinic, they had their facility that was burned, and 24,000 Medi-Cal recipients and others lost access to their health care. So we're working on providing additional funding so those who were displaced and dislocated get the essential services that they need to go forward. I will continue that action as the governor, because I'll have more in the toolkits to make sure that we add capacity, we get the domain, and that we build the environmental capacity to address those critical issues that have led to those fires and other environmental consequences.
Thank you. Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much. So, as the next governor of the state of California, it's very clear we are going to have natural disasters. These natural disasters must be responded to immediately. We have to be able to have the tools to, whether it's clear brush or thin forest if necessary, so these devastating wildfires don't get out of control and entirely eradicate entire stretches of land. But it actually goes farther than that, because you take a look at the real policy of the issue. And Jerry Brown is crisscrossing the globe, trying to tell everyone, including Californians, that raising your taxes is the answer to solving global climate change. The bottom line is that even if California went to zero emissions, the global temperatures wouldn't change by even 1/10 of 1 percentage point. Yet he just passed the cap-and-trade tax plan, which will raise your gas prices by up to another 73 cents by 2030. And will cause your utility bills to go up by 10 to 30% over the next few years. The answer is not raising taxes on Californians. The real answer is doing the things to make sure that we don't have these devastating wildfires in the future. And when we do, we take care of our California residents.
Thank you. The question goes to Mr. Villaraigosa.
Yes. First of all, my heart and prayers are with the families who lost their lives in the fires and the firefighter who lost his life as well. How would we differ, or how would I differ from Governor Brown? I want to double down on what we've done in California. I want to lead the way, just as we did here. When I became mayor, we had the dirtiest air in the United States, and still do, but we reduced carbon emissions in an 8-year period of time by 28%. Number 1 American city, number 5 in the world. What I want to do, and what we did here, is we made LA a clean tech capital of the United States. We've got to double down on creating jobs to address climate change as well, to show the world that there's a good benefit to addressing climate change, to addressing the fact that we need to lead the way here in the nation and around the world.
Mr. Newsom.
Yeah, I think what more evidence do you need than 2017, the year of extremes? We came in California after a 4 or 5 year drought, the most acute in our history, and then we had the wettest season we've ever had in our history, and then we had historic fire in this worst that we've ever seen in our history, and now we're dealing with these extraordinary floods that have taken 18 lives, an 89-year-old and a 3-year-old who lost their lives in Santa Barbara. And so your question was specific. What is the next governor going to do differently? I'm very proud of Governor Brown in terms of leading the national and international efforts on low-carbon green growth. I want to build on that. I also want to build on all of the commitments we've made. We've made a lot of promises and promoted a lot of things in addition to the cap-and-trade program, and the next governor needs to be in the how business to deliver it. But moreover, on emergency preparedness, one of the mistakes I think the administration made was doing away with the Emergency Council. I want to reconstitute it. I think we have to be more aggressive in our training in the interjurisdictional issues, our alert systems, and we've laid out a strategy specifically to address those issues.
Ms. Easton?
Well, first, let me just say my heart does go out to all of those who were affected by the fires, to those who lost their lives, but to those who lost their homes. It's devastating. I have to say to all of you, I have a confession to make. I believe in something called science. There, I said it. So, I think anybody who doesn't believe in climate change is not paying attention. We need a full court press from the next governor of this state to do long-range planning in a whole host of areas to protect our coastline from rising water, but also to make provisions so that we don't have these terrible fires in the future, so we do remove the dry brush and the dead trees, so that we do look down the road and say, what can we do to protect this great state? And we have to be especially aggressive now because we have a president that is threatening offshore oil drilling, that is doing a lot of other things. By the way, I'm the one candidate on this platform this morning who has come out to ban fracking in the state of California.
Thank you. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. The question moves to Mr. Cox.
Let me first say that I'm not a silver-throated politician, and of course, I recognize that legal immigrants are in all facets and contribute to all facets of our economy. But we have to have the respect for law. It is absolutely irresponsible to foster a disrespect for the law.
Mr. Cox,
the
please
respect
stay
for
to
the
the
law
topic.
is the only thing that separates us from Venezuela. Let's talk about the fires. I don't know if you know this, there's still 40 people missing. This is a tragedy that did not have to happen. And you know why it happened, ladies and gentlemen? Part of the reason is because of the special interests that fund these politicians' campaigns. Because the environmental lobbyists pay big money to make sure that we don't build roads into the forest, we don't thin the forest, we don't build fire breaks, we don't do forestry management, and we don't have enough people or equipment to fight these fires, and therefore they turn into absolute tragedies, and then they turn into mudslides. We need better management. We can't just blame science. We have to do something about it and manage the state better.
Moving on to education. California's high school graduation rate hovers around 83%, which sounds good, but it is not. It falls well below the national average. What would you do to boost that percentage above 83%? We begin with Mr. Allen.
Accountability, one word. California's education system should be for the benefit of California's children. It should be first and foremost for the education for our children. The problem is that for decades now, California's education system has been run by special interests that value the administrators, the unelected bureaucrats, and our students are being failed. Bad teachers need to be fired. Bad schools need to be reformed. Parents must be given the choice to send their kids to the very best schools, whether they're public schools, whether they're charter schools. Why should we condemn inner-city families to send their kids to some of the worst schools in the nation? Why should our kids be 46th and 47th in reading and math? This is our next generation. This impacts all of us. As you might know, I just got married last year. I acquired an 8-year-old beautiful daughter in the deal, and she is at a California public school. I also went to California public school. We deserve the best public schools in the nation, and we must hold our schools accountable. If they are underperforming, we need to get in there, and we need to actually solve this problem.
Mr. Villaraigosa.
Yes. If you think 83% is bad, when I was elected mayor, we had a 44% graduation rate. By the time we left, it was 72. Today, it's 77, and that was in 2016. What the 83% doesn't say, that if you're poor, Latino, or African American, you're graduating closer to 70%. Very few of you are going to college. We've got to make this issue what it is, a national tragedy and a national crisis. The next governor is going to have to say this is the civil rights issue of our time, the economic issue of our time, the democracy issue of our time. There's a connection between the number of prisons we build and the number of universities we don't. Because in the 3rd grade, when you can't read, they estimate the number of people that are going to be in our prisons. I want to educate more of our kids, and as governor, I'm going to take the lead and fight anyone who stands in the way of the notion that all of our kids have a right to a great education under the Constitution.
Mr. Newsom.
And I think the way we achieve that is investing in public schools, full service public education. You know, Antonio's right. The number one predictor of whether or not you'll end up in the criminal justice system in this country is the number of words you speak in kindergarten. So if we're going to get serious about answering the question of how we improve public education in this state and in this nation, you've got to begin at the beginning. That's why we need comprehensive, high-quality preschool in the state of California in every community. But we also have to focus on early childhood brain development. The fact is 85% of the brain is already formed by the age of 3. And that's why it's incumbent upon the next governor to invest in prenatal care and to invest in those critical first early years, nurse home visits and other programs that are working to address the needs of our kids. Look, we talk a lot about in this country the achievement gap, but we need to start talking more about the readiness gap. People aren't just being left behind, they start behind. And I am committed to early childhood focus and investing in our children in this state.
Ms. Easton.
Well, first, let me say that, of course, we have the research. We have the finest research institutions in the world. We know the steepest curve of learning is 0 to 5. Then why is preschool more available in Georgia and Oklahoma than it is in California? We need to invest in preschool. We need to make kindergarten mandatory and full day. We need to make sure that we reinvest in the kids' education. Ladies and gentlemen, you're living in the most expensive state in the union, but you are 41st in per pupil spending. What does that translate? Oh, you have the highest number and percentage of poor kids, highest number and percentage of English learners. You should be in the top 10, not the bottom 10. But guess what? You're number 1 in per prisoner expenditure. That's a disgrace. Budgets are statements of values, and to look at our budget, you would think prisons were more important than education. Frankly, the best way to avoid incarceration is to educate the kids. And by the way, that includes higher education. It's a disgrace that we have these high fees. We need to bring college tuition free again in the state of California.
Mr. Cox.
My mother always said, look at what people do rather than what they say. All the politicians are up here saying they're going to improve the school system, but look at what they do. They take special interest money, which prevents the schools from getting better. Gavin was endorsed by the teachers union. He collects a whole bunch of money there. He's collecting so much money, I'm surprised he cashed Travis's check. But what we've got to do is we've got to improve our schools. My mother was a school teacher. She was a proud member of the labor union. I am not against labor unions. What I'm against is the corruption of unions funding political candidates and then being evaluated by them. In Los Angeles last year, I was told that they issued more suspensions than diplomas. We cannot keep graduating kids that are unprepared for the workforce. That is consigning them to economic death. And that can't happen. We've got to have a governor who will stand independent of their special interest, who will certainly work to improve our schools the way they ought to be.
Mr. Chung.
Education is key to the American dream. As I mentioned earlier, that's why my parents left their homeland, left everything they knew, their family, friends, culture, to move to the United States of America. And also to start anew. They wanted this incredible opportunity. Early on, we have to make sure that we invest, as cited earlier, in early childhood education and also the child care for the families that really need it. We have to make sure that we have school site leadership that has accountability. Every person has to be involved in making sure every child, regardless of community, gets access to world-class education. The principals, the teachers, the assistant principals, the school employees, and especially the parents. Together, we can create an incredible future. We also have to stop the fact that we're in the bottom 10 for per pupil funding in the United States of America. We can't live on the cheap. We have to make the investment that is absolutely critical. If you're not going to invest, it's a statement, as Delaney said, about our incredible values. So I want to make sure that we do all that we have to make sure, and I want to empower local communities to raise the funds that they need to make sure they can take care of the local issues so that kids can get a great education.
Mr. Newsom, as you were mentioned by name there, we'll give you a short response if you'd like it.
I'm very proud to have the California Teachers Association's endorsement for one reason, that I'm committed to public education. I'm committed to increasing funding in our public school system. And I also, because I have a record. You know, San Francisco is the top performing urban school district in the state of California. We were hardly perfect. We had stubborn achievement gap issues, but the fact is we invested in arts education, every child, every classroom, K through 12. We put wellness centers back into our public schools to deal not only with physical health needs of our children, but the adolescent mental health needs. We invested in a framework where every single kindergartner, and this is something I want to do in the state of California, every entering kindergartner is given a college savings account, which I think is a profoundly significant thing that could be achieved in this state. I was very proud of that support, but more than anything else, teachers are feeling demoralized. 75% of our districts have reported they're having a difficult time retaining teachers and recruiting teachers, special ed teachers in STEM subjects and the like. And we need a governor that's committed to public education and our public teachers.
Thank you.
I don't think we can gloss over the fact that San Francisco County is the worst county for African American students in this state.
Mr. Villaraigosa, we need to move on now.
We have
the next
a little
question
bit
is coming
of an
to you,
achievement
Mr.
gap.
Villaraigosa.
We actually have a real achievement gap.
Yeah, can we
and
if we could ask you to please wrap up, Mr.
Villaraigosa, and it's
Villaraigosa.
going to do what we should
need
do,
to move
grow
on.
together. We've got to invest
We need
in
to
every
move on.
one of
Thank
us.
you.
Yeah, can we?
Moving
It's
on.
not only for African Americans, but if you look at the disparity as written by the Los Angeles Times.
We need to move on here.
All right, tell you, how about this? How about this? Let's give everybody, let's give everybody else 30 seconds to respond. Mr. Chung.
Yeah, we saw the LA Times article recently. It's not only African Americans, but the disparity in San Francisco for performance for Latinos and Pacific Islanders is far greater than in other places, right? So we're talking about a very select group that you may have high achievement that accounts for San Francisco. But when you're talking about the future of the state of California, they're being left behind.
All right, Mr. Allen, would you like 30 seconds?
Yeah, I just want to say, first, Cox, I think that George Soros wouldn't mind some of his money back, too, from Mayday PAC. But nonetheless, look, the bottom line is let's focus on the real issue. The real issue is the education of our children. And the problem is we keep on throwing more money at this system, but what we need to be doing is rewarding our great teachers. We need to be rewarding our great schools. And we must give our parents the ability to send their kids to the very best schools, whether they're public, whether they're charter. And by the way, we need to make sure that all children can go to school, and we ought to make sure that this mandatory vaccination, we need to take a look at this. And we need to make sure that you can send your kids to school, even if you have a medical exemption.
Your time has expired.
All kids deserve an education in California.
Your time has expired. Mr. Cox. And then we'll get
You're going to give me a chance to respond?
30 seconds? Yes, 30 seconds additional for everybody.
Well, again, I'm sorry. I believe all these politicians are earnestly interested in improving our education system. But again, look at the results. Look at what we've had. The reason teachers are demoralized is because they're treated like bureaucrats. We have last in, first out. They have tenure. I'm sorry, I don't have tenure in my business. None of my employees have tenure. We need to have teachers paid like rock stars and baseball players, based upon how well they do, based upon merit, based upon the ability to produce our children of our future.
Your time is expired.
Listen, we are sacrificing our future if we don't have the absolute best education system that we can have.
Your time is expired. Ms. Easton.
The most important job in America is to be a teacher. Many of us on this platform are here because we had some great teachers. And I will say, you shouldn't be shocked that there's a teacher shortage. My motto is the floggings will continue until morale improves. We need to lift up education. We need to treat it like it's the most important work we have to do as a democracy, because it is. It's about economic development. It's also about civic engagement. It's about making sure that our kids have civic responsibility at their core, as well as understanding how STEM works. And all of us together need to fight for the future by fighting for the children. But teachers should be treated with greater respect.
Your time is expired. Hold on. All right. We're moving on. We're moving on.
We'll now move on to the next question. Thank you.
Can you bring it closer?
Yes. Many individuals who submitted questions also noted that racial disparities continue to plague our criminal justice system. From policing policies to prosecution and incarceration rates, the differences are stark and pose great challenges. Please describe how you would tackle this complex issue with specific proposals that would serve public safety and improve equality. Mr. Villaraigosa.
First of all, I think we can't gloss over this, everybody. This is a great state. Excuse me. This is a great state. We got to grow together. We got to educate every one of our kids. You know, I went to a public school and a Catholic school. It was a public school that gave me a second shot. And we've got to address the fact that too many kids are being left behind. So what will we do? I want to double down on the local control funding formula. Brown was right. We need to address the fact that English language learners, that poor kids and kids in special ed don't have the resources they need to move ahead in the way that the rest of the community is moving ahead. So I want to do that in a way that doesn't spread it like peanut butter, but spends it specifically with those kids. Currently, because of powerful special interests, some of those monies are getting spread throughout the district and not for the kids that need the help the most.
Thank you. Mr. Newsom.
My understanding, the question about criminal justice and disparities. Let me say this as a value proposition. I think the era of mass incarceration must come to an end as a foundational principle. I think one of the principal drivers of this is the war on drugs. The war on drugs has been an abject failure. It's a war on poor people, and it's a war on people of color. And I believe...
Please hold your reaction.
I believe you need a governor that's been out front on these issues. You know, I'm the one person on this stage that was out front on Proposition 47, on 3 strikes reform, on the repeal of the death penalty, which we need to advance in this state. And I helped shape very aggressively the efforts on Proposition 64 and marijuana legalization. I was the principal proponent of that effort. And why do those things matter? Millions of people's lives are going to be radically benefited because of our commitment to move in a more enlightened direction. Those were not just criminal justice reforms, they were racial justice reforms, economic justice reforms, and social justice reforms.
Thank you.
We need a champion for criminal justice reform as the next governor.
Thank you. Ms. Easton.
We do need to stop the criminalization of poverty and race. We have to stop the criminalization of mental health issues. We together as a state must be together on behalf of these young people and all people. The fact is that California needs to stop this cash bail system that's keeping so many people locked up that shouldn't be. But I, some years ago, taught at the California Youth Authority, and I met these kids. And most of the kids were, in fact, kids of color, but they were also, most of them shouldn't have been in jail in the first place. Their parents should have been in jail, or somebody else should have been in jail. You know, the reality is that we have got to invest in education or we're going to keep being #1 in incarceration. And that's ridiculous. Investment in education is about the future. It starts with child development in preschool. It goes through K-12. It goes into higher ed and career and technical education. We are near the bottom of the country in what we're investing.
Thank you. Mr. Cox.
You're absolutely right, Delaney. Our prisons are populated with the failures of our education system. But I will disagree. We have massively increased education spending in the last 10 years. And where's the money gone? It's gone to the administrators. It's gone to the form filling outers. It's gone to the clerks. It's not gone into the classroom. It's not gone to the teachers. And it's going to pensions. What we've got to do is get the special interests out and get common sense back in our schools and get the money into the classroom. We also don't need to legalize all manner of drugs. What we need to do is cure drug addiction. We don't need to add more opportunities for a gateway drug for our young people. And at the same time, what we ought to do is Proposition 47 was all about the cost of housing prisoners. It costs $75,000 a year now to house prisoners. And why? Because we have prison dentists making $800,000 a year. We have prison psychiatrists making $500,000 a year. The cronies have got to be gotten out of power in Sacramento.
Thank you.
We've got to make sure that our prisons can house our prisoners.
Thank you. Moving on. And as a reminder, the question asks for specific proposals. Mr. Chung, the question moves to you.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you speak closer into the mic?
The question asks for specific proposals. The question moves to you.
From the earlier question, specific proposals. I think we need to do more of what USC does today. USC takes ownership of this community. You look at the bright, vibrant children that they're graduating from high school, from communities that oftentimes are incredibly dislocated, right? They bring corporations, they bring the academic sector, they bring business leaders together, and they make sure they have individuals who are responsible for making sure that children make it through the pathway of education and guaranteed access to higher education, along with financial assistance. We need more of that. I'm so proud to have partnered with Empowerment Congress and local communities here to make sure that we work, and in my history, I'm the only person to serve in all 3 elected financial offices, to make sure that we build an economic ladder for all individuals, right? You start off there. Antonio and I sat on Bob Ross's advisory council for men and boys of color, right? We need direct investment to change the trajectory of individual lives. That's how you keep individuals, young men and boys, from incarcerated. That's how you make sure they have a bright educational pathway. We can create that.
Thank you. Mr. Allen.
California is the state of 3 strikes. 3 strikes and you're out. This is why crime declined for decades in California. But thanks to the effort of Gavin Newsom and Jerry Brown, we now have AB 109, Prop 57, and Prop 47. Felonies are turning into misdemeanors, and criminals are getting out of jail early. These laws must be reversed. They must be overturned. As your next governor of the state of California, I will call the special elections to reverse and repeal AB 109, Prop 47, and Prop 57. Since these laws were in place, violent crime has increased. Violent crime has increased in the majority of our major metropolitan areas, 15.4% statewide in the last 3 years alone. This is making our communities less safe. If you commit the crime, you will do the time. And by the way, of all of the candidates you see here, there's actually only one candidate that believes in the death penalty. California must have a death penalty for the worst crimes in California. I will make sure that we keep the death penalty in California.
Can I respond?
Thank you.
Now we're going to talk about health care. Regarding health care, do you support a single-payer health care system in California? And if so, how would you pay for it? And if you do not, why not? We begin with Mr. Newsom.
Yeah, I support a single-payer system. I have long supported a single-payer system for health care. I believe in universal health care, not just rhetorically. I believe it as a right, and I have a little history on this. San Francisco was the first city in the United States of America to provide universal health care, regardless of pre-existing condition, regardless of your ability to pay, and regardless of your immigration status. I was very proud to put that plan together. I'm also very, very enthusiastic about the prospect of taking a system that's fragmented, that's disjointed, it's complicated and wasteful, and building a new system, not on top of it, but replacing the existing system with a single-payer financed system of universal quality health care. I believe it could be achieved for one reason alone. We're already spending $367.5 billion a year on health care in this state. You finance it through a payroll tax system, but you replace premiums and you replace the overburden on small businesses that currently are investing in the health care of their employees. We can achieve this in the state, and I am committed to being the governor to deliver it in the state of California.
Ms. Easton. Quiet, please. Ms. Easton.
I, too, support single payer, and as governor, I will push to have it become a reality for California. Ladies and gentlemen, health care should be a right, not a privilege of the wealthy. When you look at the other first world countries, the countries like our neighbor Canada or all of Europe, they all have a system where every person is guaranteed that they're going to be healthy because they have access to health care. The bottom line here is that we have people dying because very, very, very serious illnesses are not profitable for insurance companies. So budgets are statements of values. We together must decide how we are going to protect every single person. I saw a doctor who came from an emergency room over the weekend. He was depressed because although he had saved the life of a child with 107 degrees of fever, that child went deaf in one ear. It cost you as taxpayers over $50,000. The kid lost the hearing in one ear, is now disabled, and all because he didn't get $4 worth of antibiotics. We can do better.
Mr. Cox.
Think, people. I'll ask the politicians up there, why stop at health care? Why don't we have single-payer food? Why don't we have single-payer housing? And I'll tell you why. It's because the free market is the absolute best way. You know, the reason that we don't have affordable health care is because of government interference. We've got to get the patients and the doctors back in charge of health care. Health care was rejected by the liberal voters of Vermont, for crying out loud. You want to make health care more expensive and rationed, turn it all over to the government. That's the surest way to do it. We have the best food system in the world. We have the best energy system in the world because it's a free market, because it's affordable, because it's competition. That's what we need to have, people. We need to have the ability and a growing economy that's not smothered by regulations and special interests. We need to have a growing economy so that all of you can afford your own wonderful quality health care and not have to rely on the politicians to hand it out to you if you're good boys and girls.
Mr. Chung.
Yeah, while millions have been served by Obamacare, right, the thing we have to do today in the state of California is to make sure that we protect the Affordable Care Act. And then we have to build, because I understand and I strongly support single payer. My parents immigrated from Taiwan and they have single payer. But we have immediate challenges. We are under attack. We know that our federal tax plan has changed to the detriment of the state of California. The Trump administration is telling states across the state do what we're asking for, yet they're rejecting Republican proposals for health care throughout this nation. So I want to make sure that we add on to what we have today. First, build a public option, expand all of that until we have the financial wherewithal, because we are subject to great uncertainty as to how much contributions we're going to get from the Trump administration. And single payer won't work unless we get significant contributions from the federal government.
Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. We're not responding to people in the audience, so we're done.
I did read the document, right? The California Nurses Association Commission study said it would require a $106 billion tax. They proposed 2.3% sales tax, 2.3% gross premium taxes. It included taxes on private education. So do we want to increase 2.3% taxes on USC? Or do we not, for the tuition on the students?
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chung.
I support single payer, right? But the details are important, right? You have to ask Gavin how much we're going to increase payroll taxes. Are we going to support businesses in the state of California? Are we going to make it difficult to do business in the state of California?
Mr. Allen, quiet, please. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. If you keep interrupting, Mr. Allen.
As your next governor of the state of California, I will ensure that California is never a single-payer state.
Quiet, please.
Single payer, which is championed by Gavin Newsom and many of the other Democrats that share the stage with him, would bankrupt the state in the first 6 months with an estimated price tag of over $400 billion. What does this mean? This means that California, that already has among the highest in the nation taxes, highest sales tax, highest personal income tax, one of the highest gas taxes, one of the highest corporate taxes, they would raise your taxes even further. And you got to know, we already have 1 in 5 Californians living in poverty, 243,000 Californians leaving California in the last 7 years alone on net, taking $8 billion away with them. And I'll leave you with this. Californians, you must be able to keep your doctor. I will never force you to go to the DMV to see your doctor. And if single payer worked out so well, why wouldn't we all just have the VA run our health care? It'll never work. It'll bankrupt the state. And under Travis Allen as your next governor, California will never be a single-payer state.
Thank you. Mr. Villaraigosa, hold on. Quiet, please. Quiet, please. Mr. Villaraigosa.
Thank you. First of all, John, thank you for your courage. Let me be clear about something. I'm the author of Healthy Families. 750,000 kids have health care. The fact of the matter is, Trump is making an assault on our healthcare system. The priority number one has to be to defend the 2 to 5 million people that could lose their health care. That's got to be our priority. Am I for single payer? I'm philosophically for it. But we got to address the fact that it costs $400 billion. The notion that we're going to take I'm on Medicare. The notion that we're going to take everybody off of Medicare, veteran care, and everything else overnight is ridiculous. You got to have a plan, everybody. And anybody who's telling you that we should do it without a plan is selling you snake oil. So I am committed to protecting the 3 to 5 million. Yes, a public option. Address drug formularies that are just too high. Let's do take into account places like the Cleveland Clinic, Kaiser, that have cost containment efforts, and then let's work with the federal government. Finally, you need...
Your time has expired,
Yes,
sir.
You need a waiver from Trump. You need a waiver from Trump to get single payer.
Mr. Villaraigosa. All right, Mr. Newsom, you were singled out on 2 occasions by name. I'm giving you 1 minute.
I mean, I think this is just interesting to me. Antonio just mentioned that he's on Medicare. Isn't that interesting? A single payer plan in this country. that is working, that brings down the costs, that allows government to use its leverage and purchasing power. Look, you can make any argument you wish on single payer, but the one argument that doesn't fly with me and all the experts that look at this and look honestly at it is that it costs more than the current system. The current system is insolvent. The current system, we are on a trajectory to bankrupt this state. This is a serious issue, and it requires a serious debate. I love folks that are out there saying, well, I support something, but I'm going to do nothing to advance it. There's a difference between Delaney and I on this. We're committed to advancing it, yes, with a plan. Yes, by being deliberative. Yes, by being honest about the challenges, but we are committed to advancing this principle. It is long overdue in this state.
Mr. Villaraigosa, you want 30 seconds?
The answer
Quiet, please.
is you don't
Quiet,
have one.
please.
Quiet,
please.
The answer is you don't have one.
Quiet, please. Mr. Villaraigosa, you want 30 seconds?
Yeah, the answer is he doesn't have one. And by the way, the press is here. He said he's always been for single payer. You were discussing again and again and again, because in Orange County you weren't for single payer. The first time you went to the nurses, you were for single payer. Then you said you were against it. 3 or 4 times in the last 6 months, you've said you were for it or against it. Now you're doubling down and saying you're for it, and you don't have a plan.
Well, look, I'm interested in facts. That's just factually untrue. That was specific to the details of SB 562. It is misleading. That's factually untrue.
But I'd like to get in on this.
Okay, if you'd like, Mr. Cox, 30 seconds for you, Mr. Cox.
I'm almost on Medicare. And Medicare runs a humongous deficit and a debt, which we've chosen to do. That's wonderful, but the federal government can do something we can't do, and that is print money. And they're printing $700 billion extra every single year. We can't do that. We have a $1.2 trillion unfunded pension debt that these politicians have run up, and it's going to go on to your children. And the last thing we need is to raise our taxes and provide a very inefficient model of health care for every citizen.
All right, we are going to move on. We're going to move on to the next. We're going to move on.
Since we're giving everybody the shot, the bottom line is California has an unfunded health care liability for all of our retirees, right? So again, we're spending money that we don't have. And Gavin Newsom and Delaney Easton, and I'm not sure exactly where John Chung and Antonio stand on this, but they want to spend even more money to give you worse care. They want to take away your doctor. They want the DMV to give you your doctor, right? And they want to spend $400 billion of your taxpayer dollars. It's about time we cut taxes in California and actually get serious about putting more money back in your pocket, not try to take your doctor away from you.
We're not moving on yet. Since everybody now has been mentioned by name, Mr. Chung, if you'd like. Mr. Chung gets 30 seconds, then Ms. Easton gets 30 seconds, and then we will move on. Mr. Chung.
So let me make this unequivocally clear. I am for single payer, but we can't provide all the services at once. When he expanded the Affordable Care Act, right, they guaranteed 10 services. I would look at how much money we could raise and cover what services we can. Gavin, you have been inconsistent with all due respect, right? You talked to some of the insurance companies and you said single payer won't come into existence. You talked to a union that I recently interviewed with and you said we can't pay for this particular program. I'm not sure. You said last year that you were going to offer a health care plan, right? I want you to come forward, right? We need to have this public debate. What percentage are we going to increase payroll taxes to cover single payer in the state of California?
All right, now, Ms. Easton, 30 seconds, and then we move on.
When they built this great state of California's freeway system, community college system, CSU system, and University of California system, there are a lot of people that thought, wow, how did they do that? The way you do it is you put your shoulder to the wheel. If we put our heads together in the legislature with the governor who's on board, we can do this. Just like we did the fine university and community college system, the K-12 system, the freeway system, the water system. It's about having will, and I have the will to make this happen in the state of California, unequivocally.
Thank you. Now, the Empowerment Congress was founded 26 years ago with the idea of promoting civic engagement. We are seeing that this morning. I think you would all agree. These people are all civically engaged and care very deeply about this city and about this state. What will you do as governor to replicate this level of participation throughout the state of California. We begin with Ms. Easton.
Well, for 16 years, I served on the National Center for Learning and Civic Education Board. I've been the past chair. It's part of the Education Commission of the states. I learned early on in college that democracy comes from two Greek words, demos and kratos, government by the people. They also, though, invented the word idiot. It meant one who does not participate in politics. So we must stay participating in politics in this state. We must build the groundswell of responsibility on behalf of the future of California. When we think about the future of California, we need to be thinking about our children, because they are the future of California. And that means the first priority, because budgets are statements of values, should always be how we care for our children. If we do that ethically and responsibly, we can ensure a golden age for California. We're not just the 5th largest economy in the world, we could go to the 4th or even higher. I believe in this state. I believe it has genius in it. It's also got magnificent diversity, but we have to come together. If I give you 20 pencils one at a time, you can break all 20. 20 pencils together, the strongest person in this room can't break them. Let's get together.
Mr. Cox.
I applaud the Empowerment Congress, and I'm all about empowerment. And it's not just my words, it's my actions and my deeds. And yes, I've used resources that I've earned in my life of business to try to bring empowerment to all of us. We are going to get, along with my governorship, we are going to get a new legislature. There was an election that was recently held in Los Angeles here, and the turnout was 7%. And we've asked people why they don't participate. And you know why? Because it doesn't make a difference. The special interest groups, the cronies, the big businesses, and the big labor bosses control Sacramento. And these politicians have benefited from it. I put my money where my mouth is. This is going to be on the ballot. It's the neighborhood legislature. It makes all campaigns for the legislature door to door. No television, no mail. You get to actually meet the people that are representing you, and that'll get rid of the cronies and the corrupt and the people who are leading this state downward.
Mr. Chung.
As I said at the beginning, I salute Mark Ridley Thomas, KABC, the Empowerment Congress, for convening all of us, right? We want to create a different future by bringing people who were previously strangers together to address the critical issues. I want to use the governor, as Mark that uses it as supervisor, to be a convener, to bring people together through volunteer service, the action of power. My example before public service didn't start when I became an elected official. Prior to service, I served on the Advisory Council of Big Sisters of Los Angeles. Young women ought to have a better opportunity. I believe women ought to get right to reproductive health care. That's why I was a volunteer before elective office on the board of Planned Parenthood Los Angeles. I believe in people of diversity coming together. That's why I participated in the ethnic coalition down here in Southern California. Latinos, African Americans, Asians coming together to work on economic and social justice issues. That's the type of civic engagement. I volunteered. I'm not blessed with my own biological children, but I have 8 godchildren. I coached kids 6 years in basketball just because I believe that if you show an example, if you trust each other, we can rebuild the institutions of trust and faith that change lives.
Thank you, Mr. Chung. Mr. Allen.
John Cox wants to solve Sacramento by creating more politicians in Sacramento. He wants to take 120 legislators and make it over 12,000 legislators. Look, if they got problems with sexual harassment now, Gavin and Antonio, can you imagine what 12,000 politicians look like in Sacramento? The bottom line is that what we have to do, and what I will do as the next governor of the state of California, is I will bring ballot initiatives and call special elections.
Quiet,
so the people of California have the ability to decide these issues themselves. Please.
No, you have 22 more seconds if you like.
The bottom line is Californians must be asked, if you want to cut your taxes, if you want an illegal sanctuary state, if you want your communities to be safe by repealing AB 109, Prop 57, and Prop 47, listen, whether there's 12,000 legislators or 120 legislators, the majority of them in Sacramento are Democrat. 39 of the last 40 years, the California Democrat Party has run the legislature. You can't pass good laws there.
Your time
you have
has
to
expired.
take these directly to the people of California through special elections and let the people of California decide.
Your time has expired. Quiet, please. Mr. Villaraigosa.
I didn't actually hear what he said.
That's a good
But I know he mentioned our name. First of all, let me acknowledge the Mark Ridley Thomas and the people of South LA and the Empowerment Congress. This is a great example of democracy at work. It's the biggest reason why the city of Los Angeles adopted a neighborhood council system. When I was mayor, we would meet with them to identify what the priorities were of neighborhoods. And I think the next governor needs to identify what priorities are with people in our neighborhoods and in our cities. I believe that the next governor's got to engage our democracy again. I say to people, it's not just about voting. We got to get involved in our unions and our churches and every part of our civic life. I want to put a California Corps together where young people get involved and give back to their communities. And finally, I think we need more transparency in government so people can trust government to a better degree and give their input to government.
All right, thank you, Mr. Newsom.
I don't want to sound like that politician, but at peril, I wrote a book on this topic. It was a riff on Farmville. It's called Citizenville. It's about active, not inert citizenship. It begins with a wonderful quote from Justice Brandeis, who says, in a democracy, the most important office, it's not governor or president or city council member, the most important office in a democracy is the office of citizen. And it's about active, not inert citizenship. We frame it accordingly. You know, we have a government where it's you vote and folks like us on the stage decide. That's an old paradigm. We need to reframe the conversation. Design every agency in government for a two-way conversation. I think one of the great frustrations in our democracy is people have lost that trust. They've lost that faith in their elected officials, and we have to restore that. Active citizenship. We need to talk in terms of citizenship much more than we have in this state and in this country. This is something, again, I'm very passionate about.
Thank you, Mr. Newsom. Now, Mr. Cox, you were singled out regarding your proposals. If you'd like to have a minute, please.
Yeah, I want to give my young and immature compatriot a little bit of a lesson here. About 150 years ago, Edward Jenner cured smallpox by injecting people with the smallpox virus. I'm sure there were a lot of people who said, boy, that's a stupid idea, right? And now we don't have to worry about smallpox anymore, and history is replete with that. Mr. Allen knows that 12,000 people don't go to Sacramento. They don't have staffs to harass. They work out of their house. They don't get paid. They're volunteers. And you know what? Think, people. We have wonderful talent in California that would love to serve in the state legislature. And I mean represent all kinds of communities, communities of color, communities all over the state, Native Americans, and they don't do it. And you know why? Because you have to be a professional fundraiser in order to run for the state legislature. The neighborhood legislature takes fundraising out of the picture and allows reform to happen.
Your time has expired. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are nearing the end of our program today. Before we conclude the town hall, we will invite each candidate to make a 1-minute closing statement. Again, the order was determined by a drawing ahead of time. Let's begin with Mr. Chung.
Did you say me?
Yes.
I thought I was first. I thought I was first.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Cox, please begin.
I don't know. I thought I was first. Okay. There's an old expression in poker, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't know who the mark is, it's probably you. And we're all the marks here, ladies and gentlemen. I absolutely believe that these are earnest people and political leaders who want to do something good for the state. But we've got a lot of problems here, and they're not going to tell you that they can't or won't make the reforms that are necessary. And you know why? Because there's special interests and cronies in Sacramento who are protecting the status quo. That's why the status quo is the status quo, because the funders use their money to prevent any reforms. I'm running for governor to make this state affordable again, but I'm going to have to do that despite the special interests. I want everybody to join this campaign. This has got to be a revolution, and I think it can happen in this state. Text RECLAIM to 99000.
Thank you.
Reclaim to 99000.
Thank you.
And join
Moving
this
now
revolution.
to Ms. Easton.
Thank you.
Ms. Easton.
Well, thank you. And I want to say thanks to USC and to the empowerment folks and Thanks to all of you for being here. You know, when every decision we make as a state should focus on the future, and the future is about our children. And when we start making decisions based on what is best for the future and our children, we make better decisions, not just in education, but in housing, in transportation, and environmental policies. The reality is that I'm the only person on this platform that has one thing in common. I'm the only one that's been in local government, the only one that's been a state legislator, and the only one that's been a state constitutional officer. I know how to get things done. As state superintendent, I'm the one that reduced class size in kindergarten to third grade to 20 or less. I will just say I am an optimist, and optimism right now has to be a political act. We need optimists who are going to run this state and dream of the future that's a grand future. One of my favorite quotes is Neil Postman, who said, "Children are living messages we send to a time we'll never see." What is our message to the future? I hope it's one of optimism. Thank you.
Mr. Newsom.
Thank you, Mark and Mary. Thank you for the hard work today that you are advancing. And everybody here, thank you so much for the opportunity. You know, look, at the end of the day, we have to, I think, reconcile the issue that wasn't brought up. That's the issue that defines all other issues, and that's the issue of wealth and income inequality in this state, a state of haves and have-nots. We're the richest and the poorest state in this nation. We need to step up and step in and address that issue beyond any other issue. Roughly 24% of our children in the Supplemental Poverty Index are living below the poverty line. My North Star as the next governor is to end childhood poverty in the state of California, and I believe we can achieve that. But you need bold leadership. At the end of the day, that's the intangible in this conversation. We may agree on a lot of issues, disagree on some, but at the end of the day, where have you been? Have you been willing to step up and step in and be bold and lead conversations, not wait till it's politically correct or the public opinion polls catch up? Willingness to step up, step in, courage. That's the intangible, and that's what I offer all of you, the voters of California, in terms of this election.
Thank you. Mr. Villaraigosa.
You know, we face an historic and unprecedented decision in this choice for governor. Never before have we seen a declining middle class, a growth in wealth, a growth in poverty, the fifth largest economy in the world with the highest effective poverty rate, primarily because of a housing crisis that we've done almost nothing about. The next governor has to have a track record, not just say he's going to take this issue on. I was a community organizer for 25 years, a labor leader for 15. My whole life, I fought for the notion that a great city is a city where we're growing together, that a great state is a state where we're investing in one another. That means early child education. That means giving people the skills that they need for the jobs of the 21st century. The next governor is going to have to focus on the economy and middle-class jobs. I have a track record on that. I've done it my whole life. Thank you very much for your support.
Now to you, Mr. Chung.
I agree with John Antonio. This election is about what kind of future do we want for California? Who has the backbone to make the tough decisions? I've always put all of you first. In that 2008-2009 financial crisis, I was the one who stood up to Governor Schwarzenegger in the legislature, especially when Governor Schwarzenegger wanted to pay public servants federal minimum wage. When the Democrats and the Republicans passed phony budgets, I was the person who stood up in California to challenge that phony budget because we owed education $10 billion. I'm going to fight to make sure we create a future that encompasses all, that those who are privileged, the arrogance of privilege, doesn't continue to persist. I'm the one today working on creating jobs, building more housing, cleaning the environment. I have a track record today. I'm not waiting to be the governor of the state of California. I want to thank Mark Ridley-Thomas, the Empowerment Congress, Mark and Mary for convening all of this. I ask all of your support for my run for governor of the state of California because we want, frankly, to build a future that is the best and brightest that is imaginable for each and every single one of us. Thank you very much.
Mr. Allen.
California used to be the greatest state in the nation. We had the best roads, the best water system, the best education system in the entire country. But thanks to 24 years of almost the last 50 run by the Brown family, thanks to 39 years of the last 40 of the California Democrat Party controlling California's legislature, we have the highest in the nation poverty, where 1 in 5 Californians live in poverty. homeless rates that are through the roof, the largest unsheltered homeless population in the entire country. We must change this. We must take our state back. I have a very simple 5-point plan. California must cut its taxes. We must get tough on crime and repeal AB 109, Prop 47, and Prop 57. We must expand our freeways and fix our roads and not raise $1 of your taxes to do it. We must fix our broken education system so our children come first, and we must complete the state water project. The bottom line is California was once the greatest state in the nation, and it must be again. My name is Travis Allen. I will be your next governor. Join me on Facebook and join Travis Allen. Let's take our state back. Thank you.
On behalf of the Empowerment Congress, Los Angeles County Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas, the USC Unruh Institute, ABC7, and KPCC, we'd like to thank all of our candidates for participating. Let's give them all a hand. And if I may, I'd like to say a word about our audience today. I've been to a lot of these. I've been involved in a lot of events such as this. I have never seen a more spirited, engaged audience. Give yourselves a hand. This town hall is a good reminder to those of you that have not already done so. Please register to vote in time for the upcoming election. Again, thank you for joining us. Have a great day, and fight on.